Hello, listeners. This is Kat, and welcome back to Put Your Hands Up Podfics. This will be the continuation of Little Acts of Kindness. This will be part 42, chapter 42, entitled Places of Healing. Shota put his hands into his pockets as he walked next to Izashi through the halls of the hospital. Nurses, doctors, patients, and visitors walked through the halls, each going through their business for being at the Hosu Hospital. Black eyes flickered across the room numbers, looking for the one they were told was Tensei's room. Finally spotting the number, they entered. Before them, Tensei laid on the hospital bed. Bandages were wrapped around his head, wires attached to him, and a breathing mask. The blanket was lowered down to show a huge bandage over his stomach. Izashi took in a sharp breath, causing their friend to open his eyes and tilt his head to the side to look at them. Shota saw him smile from underneath the oxygen mask. Izashi, Shota, I'm surprised you came to visit little old me. Izashi crossed his arms. What? Think we're not worthy to visit you? He shot back with a playful grin as he crossed over to stand next to the bed. Shota stayed back a few steps. More like I'm not worthy of you visiting me, Tensei responded with a bit of a laugh. Cut the crap with the self-deprecating humor, Shota said, narrowing his eyes a bit. Tensei let out a long breath. Shota, don't be shy. Get your ass over here. He huffed but stepped forward, standing next to his husband. How are you really feeling, Tensei? Izashi asked. The older Ida closed his eyes, tilting his head away from them before opening his eyes and staring out the window. That bad? Yeah. Shota and Hisashi shared a glance, agreeing silently to change the conversation to help cheer up their friend. Well, we got some news that might piss you off, and might make you happy. Tensei turned back to them, blue eyes glinting in interest. Oh? Hisashi looked at him, silently urging Shota to be the one to tell Tensei. Shota rolled his eyes back, then a slight upturning of his lip was the only warning his husband got before he pulled him in for a brief kiss. We're married, Shota said to the wide-eyed Tensei. Hisashi was bright red. Sho! He squeaked out, burying his face in his hands. Shota just snickered. You deserve it. No, I don't, Hisashi whined. Tensei started laughing loudly, his laughter turning to coughing after a moment. Nem owes me 500. What? Huh? Tensei looked at them, an eyebrow raising up. Have you not told her yet? Hisashi gave a nervous laugh. No. You're like one of the first people we've told. Huh. So how long have you two been married then? A bit over a year, Shota answered. But what was the bet? Hisashi further questioned. I bet you two would get married before telling us. She bet that you would tell us while you were dating, the injured hero informed them, smiling a bit. We actually wanted your advice on telling her, Shota said, cutting to the heart of this subject of conversation. Oh? We want to keep our relationship private, only close friends Nezu and Midoriya. But we're worried that if we tell Namuri she would share it in one of her talkative drunken states. Tensei looked at them, frowning for a moment. After a minute, he said, She's surprisingly good at keeping secrets, even when drunk. If you make her promise not to tell anyone without your permission, she won't tell anyone, even under the threat of death. The two shared a glance at that information. That should have been something they knew about their friend, but they didn't. So, how long has this bet been going on? Izashi asked. Tensei stared at them before letting the subject change to a lighter topic. A few years, ever since that party 5 years ago. Both Shota and Hisashi turned red at being reminded of that party. It had been a wild night, a celebration of something Shota couldn't even remember. He hadn't wanted to go, but with his 3 best friends begging him, he agreed, if only so they would leave him alone. Which led to him getting drunk at the party, and they ended up playing Truth or Dare. Anyways, point was the game led to him and Hisashi kissing, and that was when Shota realized that his feelings for his best friend were something more than just best friends. Of course, being the idiot he was, he thought Hisashi would never feel the same way for him, unaware that Hisashi had been pining for him ever since high school. Yeah, they were both idiots, but hey, they were together now, so that counted for something, right? Come on, you gotta give me the details. How did you two finally start dating, get married, all that information? Hisashi looked over at him, and Shota just nodded. His husband beamed and launched into the tale of how the two finally confessed and started dating. Ow! What was that for? Nato demanded. For not paying attention, Recovery Girl said scoldingly. I was paying attention, though, he protested, rubbing his head where she had whacked him with her cane. It was the second day of his internship, but already he had been whacked at least 10 times. Oh, Then would you be able to tell me what I just told you? Nato swallowed. He had been paying attention, mostly. It was just that this was a lot harder to understand than he thought. When he first chose to intern with Recovery Girl, it was because she had a complicated quirk that could be useful to understand in an emergency situation. But it was a lot more complicated than he thought, judging how much life force was needed in order to heal a wound. Plus, it was awkward to have to kiss someone to heal them. Her quirk only worked by a kiss as well, which kinda sucked. Although her story of how she found her quirk was pretty cute. Apparently she was 5 and her mom had gotten a paper cut. As parents often kiss wounds to make them feel better, she had told her mom she would kiss it better, and when she did, her mom passed out, but the wound was healed. So yeah, it was pretty interesting to intern with Recovery Girl, even if judging the whole life force thing was weird. It wasn't like automatic or anything, and he could definitely use too much. You were speaking about the dangers of using too much life force, Nato answered hesitantly, and that had been the general theme of what she was talking about. She whacked him with her cane again. No, I was telling you that we would be heading out to investigate a cold case. Nato blinked. Oh, I didn't think... Recovery Girl interrupted him. Didn't think interning with me would have you get any actual hero work. He hesitantly nodded. Well, if you don't want to do the work, then I can go by myself. No, I want to do it. I'm just surprised, Nato said, eyes widening a bit in panic that she would leave him behind. He was deserving of being a hero, and he would work twice as hard as any other student to prove it. Let's get going, then. He followed after her and got into the car with her. We are investigating a doctor who went missing 8 years ago. I believe that this disappearance could be related to the 7 doctors who have gone missing over the last 5 years. All of them have disappeared without a trace. Without a trace? What good will it be for us to investigate, then? Monoma questioned. The police have given us access to their investigation notes, but we will be looking at the records of the missing doctor, one Dr. Tsubasa, left behind. They could have missed something that could be a clue. Most likely this is a dead end, but there might be information that could help. I'm starting with him, as I believe he is the earliest victim of the disappearance. During the free time I have, I will be looking into all the other victims as well. So what should I do, then? I want you to take a look around. See if you can find anything that seems out of place. Luckily, no one has bought the building, so nothing should be messed up unless someone broke in for some reason. The drive took roughly an hour, but soon they were pulling up and parking. Nato opened the car door and stepped out, stretching as he did so, hero costume shifting in the gentle breeze. Nato walked behind Recovery Girl as she unlocked the door to the small clinic, apparently the key having been given to her by the police. They entered, to immediately be assaulted by a wave of dust. It took them only a few minutes to locate the office with an old computer in it. I might be here for a while. Go take a look around, see if anything strikes you as odd. Sure, he said, and started wandering around, investigating the abandoned building. It looked to be a pretty standard clinic. Surprisingly, it seemed most of the equipment and stuff was intact. If it wasn't for the dust and lack of other people, he might think the building was still in use. Though all the medicine was gone, which was a good thing, in case someone thought stealing it was a good idea. Opening cabinets, he didn't come across anything unusual. Eventually, he found a back storage which had a few filing cabinets. Opening them, he saw they were full of records. Deciding to come back after the rest of his search, he left the filing cabinets alone. Another hour passed with him finding nothing of further interest, so he returned to the cabinets and started to skim through the files. Most of them seemed to be paper copies of people's medical records, all of them 8 years or older, of course. Another filing cabinet had legal documents and bills, stuff about the building or the guy's medical licenses. The third cabinet had only a few records, and Monoma was about to leave it alone after skimming them when his eyes caught onto the date of the file. It was 6 years old. Pulling out the file, he looked at it, frowning as it was blacked out like a spy file with a bunch of redacted data. There was no picture, no name. The only thing he could make out was that the client had been in an accident and was unresponsive to any outside stimuli. That was it, except for the date that was 6 years old. Taking the file with him, he went to where Recovery Girl continued to stare at the computer, eyes roaming over the screen as she read over information. Hearing him enter, she looked up, eyes catching onto the file in his hand. You found something? He nodded and handed over the file. She looked over it, an eyebrow raising up. Interesting. And of course they didn't find it if this happened after the investigation. I wonder, did he come back and do this medical scan? Or is this someone else using the building? Why leave the file here? And if it is the missing doctor, does that mean he was in hiding? Thank you, Monoma. I'm sure this will be useful. He sat down, pulling out his phone as Recovery Girl continued her investigation of the doctor's computer. After another couple hours, the monitor went dark, and the youthful heroine stood up, a frown on her face. "Did you find anything?" Nato asked as they left the building. "Nothing concrete, just a few old payments that don't line up with what each procedure should cost. That file you found is probably the biggest lead right now, so I'll be seeing if I can get any more information using that information. I will also send a request for the rest of the files to be looked over, in case there's another file like this. Good job." Nato just nodded. "Glad I could be of service." With that, the two got back into the car and began the hour-long drive back to UA. All right, listeners, this concludes Chapter 42 of Little Acts of Kindness. Chapter 43 will be up next. Hope you all are still enjoying it. As always, thank you so much for listening.